What will happen to a landlord's case if a landlord improperly gives a tenant a 3-day notice? What happens? Hi, my name is Rob Wells. I'm the Landlord Warrior on TikTok and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our videos here. Now, we get this question a lot. This one's from a tenant, but we do get this from a landlord as well, too, from the landlord's perspective about what they need to be successful to win an eviction or unlawful detainer case on a 3-day notice. Okay, now there's different types. There's like non-payment of rent, there's like complying with your lease, material lease violations, and telling your tenant that, hey, you need to fix the lease violation, or if not, you got to move out. And there's nuisance. Okay, those are like the three main ones. Okay, now every time that I talk with a landlord, whether you're doing a case for non-payment of rent or for material violation of the lease, I ask the landlord, okay, you have to have documentation that the tenant has done something wrong, because that's the first step, is identifying what the tenant has done wrong so you can put it on the 3-day notice. Okay, so I'll use a rent case, for example. Okay, you say your tenant is late or delinquent on paying the rent. Great. Law says you can issue a 3-day notice to tell them, hey, you must pay your rent within 3 days, excluding weekends and holidays, right? Judicial holidays, right? And if you don't do that, you got to move out. And if you don't move out or pay your rent, as on the notice here, we're going to start an eviction or unlawful detainer case to actually remove you from possession of the property by court order. Okay, that's what an eviction is. Okay, so if the facts are not true, right, based on, like, if you issue the 3-day notice for rent and it's actually not due, okay, a landlord's going to find themselves on the losing end of that eviction. Okay, because if the tenant files a legal response, there's several, but the most common one that respond to the court complaint is what we call the answer. The answer to the complaint is the tenant's formal legal response to the allegations in the court complaint. Because when we file a court complaint, what all a complaint is, it tells the story of what the tenant did wrong. Okay, that a tenancy was created and then something bad happened, such as the tenant didn't pay their rent. Okay, and court, our complaint is asking and is praying, what we call in legalese praying, you're asking a judge to actually get an order to remove that tenant for failing to pay the rent on time. Okay, so if anything is wrong with that, the tenant can challenge the landlord, and the tenant can say, hey, for example, if the tenant actually paid the rent, well, no, I'm contesting what the landlord's saying. I actually did pay that rent. I paid the rent for October. I sent it to you, Venmoed it on the first of the month, as we always do. And then the tenant may attach to the answer, may not. You might have to find that out before the hearing, is, hey, here's my Venmo receipt. Okay, if you got a case like that, basically, where the tenant can counter what the landlord is stating, you're not going to prevail on that eviction. Okay, in fact, you're going to probably have problems. Okay, so the question on this particular question, I don't know what they mean by illegal, but if they can contest the case, like there may be a defense of not paying rent, for example, or maybe the landlord increased the rent unlawfully, over the limits of the Tenants Protection Act. That's what we would call affirmative defenses, basically. Why a landlord should not get possession of the property back based on some violation of the law. In a 3-day notice to perform type case, if the breach is not material, let's say there was I'll use the dog example, where, hey, the dog can't be no more than 25 pounds and the dog gained 25.5 pounds. Okay, law will only let you evict a tenant for a material breach. If it's an immaterial provision that the tenant violated, the court may go, so what? Okay, like, we shouldn't evict a guy for his dog getting a half a pound heavier. It's the same dog. It's not like he moved in a mule that's 1,000 pounds or however weight mules are. Okay, we're not talking this. We're talking about something that's trivial. Okay, so that's where landlords can get into trouble, and it's a very technical field. Okay, because the evictions, you have to comply with every part of the law, and even if the landlord complies with the law, there might be good reason why a tenant should be excused from not being evicted. Okay, what we call basically forfeiting their lease or rental, or canceling out the rental agreement. Okay, so that's what can happen if a landlord improperly issues a notice, and depending on if there is if the landlord has violated some type of law, for example, they may be on the hook for the tenant's legal costs and expenses, such as attorney's fees. There's several statutes, such as like the Tenants Protection Act, that have attorney fee provisions. If a landlord materially violates the agreement, they can be on the hook for the tenant's attorney's fees and that type of deal. Or if the landlord has has habitability problems and they're issuing a 3-day notice for rent, that violates Civil Code section 1940 2.4, for example. That, I think that has an attorney's fees provision. So you could be paying legal expenses. You could be ordered to, like, the eviction. The judge may say, hey, we're not evicting the tenant, and there may be other consequences that happen based on the party's lease agreement, such as if there is an attorney fee provision, the tenant's the prevailing party, possibly, then you might be on the hook contractually as well too. So landlords, if you're having a tenant problem, right, and it's complicated, or you don't know exactly what you're doing, but you might need some help out, and you're in the Northern California area, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We have a link to book a free case review session. There's a couple of questions to see if we're going to be a good fit or not, and we can go from there. Just look at your situation. Put your comments, questions down below. Until next time, folks, I'll talk to you then. Thanks.